Can all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. The palms down. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? As you're here for the first time, what brings you here? I see a couple hands.
I'm interested in learning more about meditation.
Yeah. What do you know so far?
I like it.
There you go. I don't want to ruin that. What if you hate it after this? Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Another hand. Yeah.
It's my first time here, but not my first time in meditation.
Yeah. Nice. How'd you end up here? Always someone to blame it on.
We were researching.
Yeah. Nice. Glad. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Anyone else first time here? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I came with my friend Megan, so it's my first time.
Yes. Hi, Megan.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I'm not used to leading with you all the way in the back. You should be in the front taking notes. Yeah. Well, glad you're here. Anyone else first time here? Those of you who keep coming back, why? Why do you show up? Let's cut through all the jokes. But why show up?
Good state of mind.
Good state of mind. What else?
It's nice to just stop and not do something. Just sit.
Yeah. Nice to stop, not do something, and just sit. I just repeat for our millions of virtual followers. Yeah. What else? Why show up?
It's comforting to hear that other people have pain and troubles like I do.
Yeah. That's a big one. It's comforting to feel that other people have, pain and troubles like you do, because very often it's this life can be real lonely sometimes. And when we struggle, and we might feel like we're the only one struggling, and there's something about the realization that everybody's struggling that I think makes things a little more pleasant to enjoy our struggles together. Yeah. Sangha. Yeah. Community. What else? Anyone? It's a good thing just to ponder. I like to ask that every so often, not just, for those who are new, why show up, but to those who keep coming back week after week, year after year, to remind yourselves why, what the purpose is for you. Never forget what the original intention was, which kind of led you to a place like this, whether it's here or any sort of meditation, spiritual practice, right? Often as we go through life, we hit a lot of challenges, difficulties, conflicts, and that's when you want to try to come back to the practice the most, to never forget what originally brought you, to the space. By space, again, not only just here, but just the space to where you wanted to explore some sort of meditation or spiritual path. Because as life throws challenges at you, it's nice to have something to kind of sit with and be able to look at and just kind of observe how life's difficulties are affecting you. and to be able to be okay with that. Very often we might think that if you do meditation or Buddhist stuff or some sort of spiritual practice, that all of a sudden everything's just going to be fine. It's not. Sorry for the new people who came here thinking everything might be fine, but at least we got that out of the way. It's really just about recognizing the challenges and difficulties that we face and being able to face them with a sense of kind of kindness and compassion towards yourself and everybody around you. So, yeah. And to those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are on the chat box there. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice of learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide to the front third, push the stomach forward. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. Again, if you are new, you're not trying to shut your mind off. You're not going to go blank. You're not going to think nothing. Your mind will continue to race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought or bring you back to the present moment and wake you up. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. You realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen, You react, more stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment, as I mentioned earlier, is filled with chaos, conflicts, difficulties, challenges. So this practice of learning to be with life as it arises. For lives are a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't necessarily fix that. It helps us become aware of what's going on in our lives so we can then make changes. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's it. It's not that complicated. Often people like to complicate it because it's 2,500 years old and been shared so many different ways all over the world. But the very basic Buddhist teachings are simple. Awareness of thoughts, awareness of words, awareness of actions. And working on being kinder and gentler to ourselves and everybody we encounter. And that's it. It's so simple, but seemingly just impossible to do. You know? I mean, you just have to be nice to everybody. That's it. That's all. Simple, right? Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, is where we spend so much of our time. Hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time focused on the thoughts and words and actions of others. And I'm not saying the thoughts and words and actions of others aren't important, nor should they be ignored. But this practice is not about changing their thoughts and their words and their actions. This practice is about your thoughts, your words, and your actions, and how that impacts the world around you. So that's what we focus on. So with that, I'll pause. For me, always, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And to those joining virtually, again, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free, as you are, to say hello on the chat box. If you have any questions, put them there. I'll do my best to respond. And we'll use the rest of our time to open up for questions.
So I hear words and I don't fully grasp their full meaning.
Ah,
So for example, last week you described yourself as a Zen practitioner. So I hear words like Zen and Chan and humanistic and Tibetan and Theravada and Mahayana. So what makes you a Zen practitioner versus something else?
yeah. So the question was around virtue, for those who didn't hear, around just certain language and words, around different schools of Buddhism. As you said, I mentioned last week that I consider myself a Zen practitioner, but you've heard Zen and Theravada and humanistic and Tibetan. And so your question is directly what makes me that, but I'll really comment on, kind of the big picture here. I mean, whatever I call myself is totally irrelevant. Doesn't really matter because it's a false awareness anyways, based on what I think is accurate, which would be false also. Just trying to sum up what being a Zen practitioner is like. You know, you're just always wrong. It's a lot easier that way. You know, I mean, think about how we live our lives, always trying to be what? Right. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how much easier it was to just shift into the complete opposite realm and realize I'm just always wrong? That was so much easier. All the pressure fell away, all the heavy burden, you know, you begin to cut through that ego that thinks I got to be right all the time. It's like, no, I'm just wrong. This is nice. Yeah, try that sometime. But to your question, because you probably want an answer. Yeah, right? Yeah. So to put it into context briefly, especially for those also who might be new and you've heard various, you know, stages of this response, but, you know, the Buddha himself, born in India 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ, as he shared the teachings, you know, he died at 80 years old. He was a prince, you know, left home at 29. He roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years. At 35 years old, he sits down under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India, says, I'm not leaving until I figure out why we suffer. He understood that all suffering comes from the nature of his mind. He then spent 45 years teaching that, and at 80, he died, okay? Then, over the next 100, 200 years, Buddhism spread south, goes into Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Southeast Asia predominantly. I'll tie them into your question in a minute. Then around the turn of the century, 500, 600 years later, Buddhism spreads north, goes into China, Japan, Korea, etc. You have the development of what's called Mahayana Buddhism. Then about 1,000 years after he died, Buddhism goes into Tibet. And you have what's called Vajrayana Buddhism. So to put these three main schools of Buddhism, when the Buddha taught, and those first couple hundred years, they initially called it Theravada, which meant of the elders. Okay, that was what they called the original school of Buddhism. 500, 600 years later, as it goes north, they have development of what they called Mahayana Buddhism. Maha is greater, Yana is vehicle. Have you heard me explain it this way before or no? Okay, so Maha is greater, Yana is vehicle. And they began to call, the initial school was called initially Hinayana, which was lesser vehicle. Hina is lesser, Yana is vehicle, then Mahayana, greater vehicle. What they realized was that they shouldn't have one school of Buddhism be called greater than the other, because it wasn't about it being better. So they changed the name of Hinayana to Theravada, as it's more commonly referred to today, Theravada, which means of the elders. Then after the, 1,000 years later, when it goes into Tibet, you have Vajrayana. So Yana is all three: vehicle, lesser vehicle, greater vehicle, diamond vehicle, as it's called in Tibetan Buddhism. From these three major schools, Hinayana or Theravada of the elders, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, you have different forms of meditation and different forms of practice. Now, even to answer your question specifically, you also reference Zen and you reference Chan. Yet those two, you know what they are? Exactly the same. It's just language, which is really the nature of your question as well. Chan is in Mandarin Chinese. Zen is Japanese. It comes from jhana, which is knowledge or gnosis. But ultimately, the word Chan in Chinese or Zen in Japanese, you know what it translates to most commonly? What it actually means? Meditation. So when you hear people say Zen meditation, what they're really saying is meditation, right? But welcome to America. We like foreign terms. And so we put Zen in front of everything now, every Zen spa and Zen cereal and Zen breakfast and Zen therapy. Like everything has the word Zen in front of it, and it's cool. It's a great Scrabble word also, because the Z, and you can put it on like triple letter, but Zen is just meditation, but Zen is Japanese, Chinese would be Chan. Even more specifically for me to say it, where I was really trained and taught was through Taiwanese Buddhism in a mixture of what's called Pure Land Buddhism, as well as Chan, right? I often just say Zen because most people don't connect with Chan, but it really is Chan Buddhism for me because it came from Taiwanese and Chinese Buddhism. And so the temple I started at, the monastery I lived at, that was all Chan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and Pure Land Buddhism. Now, even within those schools, it breaks down. Tibetan has 4 schools it breaks into. Zen, for the most part today, has Rinzai and Soto Zen. So it breaks down into further different schools. All that stuff can be overwhelming, especially when you first hear it. And you know what it means? Nothing. That's why I don't talk about it much, because it's really irrelevant. People get wrapped up, often it's funny, people come in, and it's cute. Like, I don't mean this in an offensive way to anybody who's done this, because I know I did it early on. People will come in or whatever, and they'll be like, so what kind of Buddhist are you? The good kind, right? The kind that tries to be kinder and gentler to everybody else. But people do get wrapped up, I find, in the, I'm a Theravada Buddhist, or I'm a Mahayana Buddhist, or I'm a this Buddhist. Like, to label it that way defeats the entire purpose of what Buddhism is ultimately all about. But yes, I understand, based on where we learn, where we study, what lineage and tradition, it does give a title and a name to it. You could simply go to Google and just put in Buddhist traditions or Buddhist lineages or Buddhist schools, scroll Google for an hour. But I don't talk about all that stuff because, like I said, it doesn't matter. And ultimately, you know what all schools are teaching? The same thing. Same stuff. It's just practiced differently. But there are very, some subtle, some not so subtle differences. So when I would call myself a Zen practitioner, there are very subtle and not so subtle differences in what that way of learning and practicing Buddhism versus maybe, say, Tibetan Buddhism. I like to sit and stare at walls and do nothing.
Be wrong.
And be wrong. Thank you. That's right. Thanks, Leo. So, yeah. What else? Yeah.
I hope I'm concise and clear in my question. I've been trying to script it for the last 20 minutes. So I've come to appreciate the importance and the value of detachment, particularly how it helps alleviate cravings and maladaptive behaviors. And that has kind of led me down understanding the importance of letting yourself travel by the flow of the river, not fight the current and all that. At the moment, I'm working on my projects for the future, and I'm trying to reconcile the balance between going with the flow, letting life happen, but also kind of waking up with the motivation to work towards a goal and be attached to that goal.
Yeah, no, you formulated it quite well. So even though we were supposed to be doing meditation and you were formulating your question, you still did a good job. So just to paraphrase, your question is around, and I'll touch on this in a minute, but you said your question really is around how to find a balance. It's such a common question, especially for people beginning to learn about Buddhism, how to find a balance between, as you say, detachment and also working on projects and setting goals. First and foremost, anytime people bring up the teaching of non-attachment, they will often call it detached or not attached. And I always kind of caution people and suggest really use the word non-attached. Because detached or not attached almost sounds like a cutting off of, like a severing, as if you don't care. And even in the way you word your question, it's like, well, I like this detached thing, but I'm also setting goals and want to be successful in the future. So when you say detached, it makes it sound like you don't care. Non-attachment is very different. Non-attachment is actually love. Non-attachment is caring about everything. But you're not attaching to the outcome. Think of the way, someone loves a child, that you love them, a little child. But that, say a 5-year-old kid, that they're just going to run and do stupid stuff. I mean, just like us, really. But let's just focus on the 5-year-old for now. You love them regardless. But you're not attached because you understand that you can't control them. They're just doing stuff. And you try to control them a little bit and they run off again. And then you try to control them and they run off again, And then you wake up and you're 50 years old and you're trying to control yourself and you run off again. So you love them regardless of what they do. It doesn't mean you don't care how they end up, just like your projects. So there's really no struggle. If you understand non-attachment is love, then the struggle goes away. Because you should care deeply about what you're doing. Right? But the important piece is to not attach to how it's going to end up. Do you like to cook food?
Yeah.
No, bad. I love the honesty. So I guess asking you for a good cook is also out of the question, right? But who here likes to cook? Who cooks good stuff, right? You got. I've had your food. Your food is excellent, right? You got all the stuff that's going in it, right? You got your ingredients. You're putting it all in there, but you don't know how it's going to end up. Depending upon what goes into it determines how it ends up. And you could alter a few things, like you could make something just one little ingredient off, and it could ruin the whole thing.
Best lesson in non-attachment is Swedish chef.
Right, to be a chef is the best lesson in non-attachment.
Well, Swedish chef.
Oh, Swedish chef, sorry. Because I know the
From the
difference.
Muppets, man.
There you go.
He
All right.
always screwed stuff up.
Yes, it's true. So the idea is that you don't know how the outcome is going to be, but you put the effort in 100%, no matter what. Have you had things in life thus far work out not the way you thought they would? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had things work out worse than you thought they would at times in your life?
Yeah,
And have you had things work out better than you thought they would at times in your life?
certainly.
The future is going to be the same. No matter how hard you work on your goals, you have to take one moment, one step, one ingredient, one effort at a time. Be diligent. The Bodhisattva statue up here, Samantapada, represents great diligence, right? This Buddhist practice is not about laziness. It's not about not caring. Right? I mean, Dogen, the great Zen master, would say, practice as if your hair is on fire. I don't have to worry about that so much, but for those of you who have hair, if your hair is on fire, you wouldn't just sit there and let it burn. You'd be working hard to put it out. So put great effort into whatever your future is going to hold. But I can promise you this, it's not going to turn out how you want it to. It might turn out better, it might turn out worse, and it's going to be a combination of both. You have no idea what your future holds, right? You may have future plans for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years from now. None of us know for certain that we're even going to wake up tomorrow. So you can have those plans. You can work hard at them. But the practice would be not to attach to the outcome and the result. Does that make sense?
It certainly does.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure. What else? Yeah.
Could you talk more about what you were making a joke about, the Zen always being wrong? As a person who really loves to be right more than anything.
You want to know more about that, huh?
I do.
Doesn't it sound nice? Or scary?
Yes, both.
Scary. Yeah. So the question, those who didn't hear it, was, could I talk more about the thing I was joking about as far as, always being wrong? And you're asking it from a perspective of someone who always likes to be right. So yes, in a very serious manner. So I suggest also Googling the Heart Sutra to read that a little bit, which helps. It's confusing. It won't make any sense. It'll seemingly contradict everything about Buddhism. Basic Buddhist teachings, the Four Noble Truths. First one, life is filled with suffering, discomfort, angst, disease, dissatisfaction. Second one is the cause, greed, anger, ignorance. Third noble truth is the ending of suffering. And the fourth noble truth is the path, the Eightfold Path. Correct view, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. That is the very first thing the Buddha taught, and all of the schools of Buddhism, regardless of where they come from, are based off of that, right? The Heart Sutra says there is no suffering. There is no cause of suffering. There is no cessation of suffering, and there is no path. There is no wisdom or any attainment. With nothing to attain, bodhisattvas, enlightened beings, attain anuttara samyak sambodhi. So the Heart Sutra in the Mahayana school of Buddhism, which is one of the most commonly recited sutras around the world, millions of people literally right now probably reciting that sutra, it tells you, with nothing to attain, you will attain supreme ultimate enlightenment. Sounds pretty nice, right? The idea is that you're not attached to, well, let me ask you this. I'm just pretending I don't know the answer here. Do you like to control things?
Oh, no.
No. This will work out real well. So for someone who likes to be right, that also means they like to control things. And the more you like to control, the more you like to be right, and the better you get at it, the harder your life becomes. Because then everything just becomes this perfect little thing that has to fit. Right? I often joke, I think I even said this to you, Megan, but do y'all remember, what was the name? I think it was called the game where you have like little shapes and those little timer. Perfection, right? So yeah, so there's a joke going on social media where it talks about like all of our, especially if you're, of this age or whatever, all of our anxiety, all of our fear, all of our worries started with that game, right? So it's this game for you youngsters, that little board game, you turn a timer, it like buzzes, you can hear it buzzing for a minute or 45 seconds, and there's like 40 little pieces that you put, and there's shapes. You have to put the circle in the circle and the square in the square and whatever else shapes, and if you don't get it done in time, the whole thing just like poof. And then you get started and it like freaks you out. So our entire life, we are playing the game of perfection. And we are trying to fit every little piece into every little place. And if it doesn't, we panic. For me, Zen practice, without giving you a very direct answer, is just playing the game and putting the pieces wherever you want. Turn them sideways, turn them upside down, throw them away. But while you're playing, don't hurt people. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt animals. Don't hurt any sentient beings. Don't judge people. Don't label people. Your views are not correct. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great late Zen, are you familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings? Right? So he said, you can Google another thing. What is nirvana? It's a 7-minute, 42-second clip. And one of the greatest teachings I ever heard, he talks about what is nirvana. He says nirvana, which is freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And he goes on to say in that teaching, all views are wrong. Now, the first time I heard that, I was like, that doesn't sound right. And I realized, like, wait a minute, who am I to argue with Thich Nhat Hanh, right? So that was the idea, was understanding you're going to have your views. You're going to put your pieces where you want. But you're not right. That's just your perception. And the control and the effort to control just reinforces that. And then you're stuck. And then you end up here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock sitting with me. Stuck more than all of you. So that's what I'm talking about, is this practice is not about right or wrong. We kind of joke about being wrong, but it's really not about right or wrong. It's beyond all those labels and recognizing, are we doing things that benefit self? And I don't mean in a greedy, selfish way. Like, do I get more? But taking care of our mind, our hearts, right? Are we doing things that are benefiting self and others and making the world a kinder, gentler place, or are we doing things that make things worse? That's what matters. And when you can do that, then you just play. And you're not attached to the outcomes because you're going to die. We all are. So we appreciate each moment, every moment, because we don't know when the game's up. Yeah, that's what I mean by you're always wrong. It's really, you're neither right. And even the Heart Sutra, the larger version of that's called the Diamond Sutra. And it's really about duality, and it's neither right nor wrong.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So based on that, what's your take on truth then?
What's my take on truth? Yeah, truth. So the Buddhist teachings around truth is very clear that there is ultimate nature of reality. According to Buddhist teachings, I don't know how you're familiar with Buddhism or brand new. Yeah. So Buddhist teachings that one of the names of the Buddha, another name they called him was Tathagata, which means suchness, things as they are. So from the Buddhist perspective, from the Buddhist lens, I mean, the Buddha wasn't a god, so he wasn't speaking truth. His words were as nonsensical as everyone else's. He said, here's my teachings. If they work for you, try them, first of all. If they work for you, put them into your life. If not, abandon them. He wasn't saying follow his word as truth. He was saying, true nature of reality is truth. But we cannot touch the true nature of reality. So there is no ultimate truth is reality, things as they are.
Mhm.
Everything of that reality is what? Our perception. And is our perception correct? No. So ultimate truth is not something that can be touched or spoken, or it's an experience. Ultimately, again, coming back to the Zen practice is an experience of present moment. Ultimate truth is an experience of present moment beyond any label, any projection, any views, any judgments, any notion of subject, object, any notion of self versus other, any notion of me versus you, is an experience in the present moment. When you eat pizza, you take a bite of pizza. That is the experience. The moment someone says, what does it taste like? And you start to describe it,
That's it.
that's it, you're done.
Mhm.
So ultimate truth is an experience. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
This is something I've been wondering about. Past actions that you've had when you were unskillful. What is there to do about them?
Yeah. So the question was past actions when you were unskillful. Mumble, what is there to do about them? Yeah.
Yeah.
You talking about mine or yours?
Well, I am talking about mine.
Yours,
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, I'll talk about
Of which
mine.
there are many.
Yes. So my past actions that were unskillful, what can I do about them? Nothing. Zero. I'll tell you what I can't do, or what I don't want to do, or what I haven't found helpful, is to allow them to destroy me. You know, we could sit down someday and draw out all of our past unskillful actions, and despite what you may think, I probably would win.
I don't know about that.
You know? So the idea is, can I look at my unskillful actions, of which there were plenty, there still are plenty, and there will be plenty, and can I not hate myself for having done them? Can I not consider myself any type of person because I've done them? Can I recognize that all of my actions from the past brought me to this moment and an opportunity to be a kinder, gentler person? Can I learn from them? So I guess there's something you can do. You can learn from them. You know, my first teacher always said, when you do things that harm others, as far as kind of looking, especially in our Western culture, people look for this kind of like retribution, atonement, you know, something to, you know, when you're Jewish, Yom Kippur, you get to go one day and you're free. All your sins. When you're a kid, one day you're like, I'm free of all of my sins in one day, the Jewish New Year. And then by like noon, you've already committed a bunch more, so you got to wait a whole another year. But my teacher always said, when you do things you shouldn't do, and especially looking at the past, I found this very helpful. 3 things. 1, recognize what you did was not skillful, was not in line with any sort of, you know, Dharma, Buddhist teachings, or any spiritual journey. 1. 2, to apologize if it's appropriate. Meaning, you know, if all of a sudden you have some brilliant awakening that you treated somebody like crap 30 years ago, and, you know, you broke her heart and you want to like apologize, she's probably over it by now, right? There's no need to go back to that moment because they don't want to hear from you, but to genuinely apologize to somebody else for harm that you've done in the past, right? So if it's relevant and recent and you can apologize, great. If not, you want to kind of make amends and apologize for it, then find somebody that, you know, that you're comfortable saying, I apologize to for that action. And then the third one is the vow. And man, this has been so, I think, important in my practice and still is, and is still difficult, but to vow to not do and repeat the same unskillful, harmful actions that you've done. But, you know, learning to be at peace with all the stuff I did is incredibly liberating, because you can hate yourself for things that you've done. And then that just perpetuates that cycle, which is what led many of us to this point to begin with. We grow up angry, pissed off, unhappy. We do things that harm others. we apply more hate and hatred to ourselves, then we do more things that harm others. And this cycle just repeats year after year after year after year. And one day you have to just try to realize, like, hey, I was an idiot. I did stupid things, right? That's the truth, you know? So you can't change it. Cannot change it. There's so many things I wish I hadn't done. And you know most of my story. So many things I wish I hadn't done. So many people I hurt. But I can't change it. And I could not continue to live hating myself for those things. So, yeah. Trying to love yourself anyways is critical. Yeah. All right, anything else before we close? We'll do one more if anybody's got one. Yeah.
Is there a concept of the soul in Buddhism versus like consciousness? And my question stems back to a couple weeks ago, I asked a question about Christianity and Buddhism. And so can you have, like in Christianity, if they believe that the soul goes to heaven at death, that's not the same concept of Buddhism, can both be true.
Yeah. So the question is around the concept of a soul, and your question from a few weeks ago around Christianity and Buddhism, and how Christians have the idea that, how did you say that your soul goes to heaven? That was your word, yeah. Can you have both? So here's the thing. Very simply in Buddhism, it was actually the one thing, and then I'll kind of tie this together and I'll close with this thought, but it was actually the one thing one of the main things that differentiated Buddhism from Hinduism. So the Buddha predominantly was raised Hindu for the most part, right? Vedic Indian culture. And at that time, they believed in what was called Atman, a soul. And the belief was that this soul was reincarnated or reborn or a continuation of consciousness, whatever language you want to use around that, right? The Buddha came around, and that's where the emptiness teachings come in, and said, no, there is no soul, on Atman, no soul, that we don't have a soul. We are simply a collection of consciousness that continues on, which isn't our soul. Physical form, body, consciousness, and then people gave me the name Jeff. So I'm like, well, I'm Jeff. This is my body. This is my consciousness. This is just some name. It's just a label. Just a word. This body comes together for a period of time. From the Buddhist lens, the body will cease to exist. The consciousness will continue. That consciousness is different from a soul. So the question very directly, you may have heard me say this, but a good friend years ago, she was a pretty devout Catholic. You heard me give this example? Yeah, and she referred to Buddhism as like a software upgrade. It made her stronger to her faith. So there is no conflict from the Buddhist lens. Now, I'm not saying the same goes the other way around. I'm not suggesting that you walk into church and tell whoever that, hey, we don't have, like young Sheldon, hey, we don't have a soul. I'm not saying that's going to work in church. But from the Buddhist lens, there is no soul. There's just a collection of consciousness that's in this body. Now, here's the thing, the big catch, which again, I also might have responded to this with last time. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe, from the Buddhist perspective, you don't have to take one view or the other. Here's my approach is, look, if there is a heaven or hell, what's going to determine, for the most part, where you go? Your actions. If there is a rebirth, a continuation of consciousness, a reincarnation, what's going to determine how that ends up? Your actions. So it is fun for a while, intellectually, especially when you're like really exploring this stuff, to kind of ponder what's the difference in Christianity and Buddhist view of rebirth and soul and all that kind of stuff. And then ultimately for me as a practitioner, it was like, I'm alive. I'm gonna die. That stuff will work itself out on its own. Meaning, regardless of whether I intellectually come to terms with it. I mean, even for those who say that they believe in rebirth, how do you know? For those who say that you're going to die and go to heaven, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, how do you know? For either of those things to occur and to potentially even know what happens, it's when you die. And I can't control that. But I can control what I do when I'm living. And then I'll let that, I'll let other people figure that out. If they're going to tell me where I'm going, great. If they're going to send me downstairs, great. I was going to say that's out of my hands, but to me, that's the beauty of Buddhist practice, is it's not out of my hands. To me, it would suck to leave that up to somebody else. It's up to me. I have every opportunity right now to make sure whatever happens next is beautiful, regardless of what I've done in the past. So it's not really there's no parallel, because there is no soul, to very directly. There is no soul. So in that regard, there's really no conflict. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Pam during her time of healing, and to Mark, his family who suffer at this time, and to Megan. May they all be free from suffering. May we all be free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Hazel has a few announcements. And as Hazel's coming up, one quick announcement. We will be marching again this year. The newsletter didn't go out yet with the info, but it's gone out on social media. We'll be marching again this year in the San Diego Pride Parade. It'll be Saturday, July 19th. So if you go to the website, you'll see Pride Parade 2025. You can RSVP there. That's on the Saturday. And then Monday, the biggest thing we do other than march in the parade is after the festival, when everybody's exhausted and worn out, and those who consume or hungover and everything else that's going on after a 2-day festival, somebody has to clean up Balboa Park. And so we have sworn for as long as us and Pride is in existence, we will be there Monday morning, 7 a.m. bright and early to clean up Pride Parade or Pride Festival. So if you go to the website, all the info's there. It's a great time, all of it. So thanks. Thanks, Hazel. Go ahead.
Hello. We opened Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay and close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.